Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I'll be your host. Of course, I just wanted to get something my eyes because, I'm those people. I participate in a few different areas. So it's a little bit of I want to say behind the scenes catch up. I just want to make sure that I have gotten all my notes in the right places for individuals that need information from me. So, thank you guys again for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And I hope everyone is having a fabulous day today. Just looking forward to getting started with our Mighty Men Thursday. And again, just a reminder, it is open mic. So if anybody wants to be a part of the broadcast, please send me an email at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com, or you can direct message me on X. And with that, let's get into our Kids Corner.
Had the newest toys and the coolest clothes, but today, something went wrong. During recess, Tom accidentally knocked Brad's new basketball into a puddle. Brad was furious. Tom said sorry, but Brad refused to forgive him. "You ruined my basketball," Brad yelled, pushing Tom away. Brad couldn't let it go. He kept thinking about how unfair it was, but his anger made him work later about realized, was it really worth staying mad? Brad took a deep breath and walked over to Tom. "I'm sorry I got so mad. Do you want to play?" Tom smiled, and just like that, everything was okay again. Sometimes forgiving someone's friendship and fun.
Okay. Okay. I I I'm sorry. Yeah. The internet is what it is, and it can be a little maddening at times. Just a bit. Just a bit, right? I'm like, it's just a simple video, and you can't play a simple video. It's just, I don't do much in the background. I might do a little bit, but I'm not using any filters. I'm not using anything that would really kind of mess anything up, and just saying. It's kind of crazy. But anyways, let's get back to it. Let's get into honoring God with our bodies. And so, God, please guard our mind and our thoughts. God, help me fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect my ears from sin's damage. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help my hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, please protect my reproductive organs. God, help me to honor you with purity. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect our feet as we walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And today is, well, I should say this weekend is a special new beginning, and it will be Resurrection Sunday. I know some people say Easter, some people say Resurrection Sunday, but I like saying Resurrection Sunday because it really focuses on the why. Why are we even gathering, right? We're not gathering because of bunnies and candies and eggs. We're gathering because someone sacrificed the ultimate sacrifice for us and rose again and kept his promise, right? All of that. So, for any of you out there, I hope that you have a home church that you can go to. I will be putting links to my church that I attend because we will have services broadcasting online starting on Friday. So, I just really hope that everybody is able to participate Now, before we get into our trending X stories, as you could see, I had there on the screen, there was one I just came about around a YouTuber. And I was like, "Ooh, I gotta put that in last minute." So that's what I was messing with. When the show started, I was like, "Oh, I gotta get this in. I have to share this because you guys need to see. You guys need to see this. It is something I've been talking about, and now someone is actually being affected because they're standing up for righteousness. It's very interesting.
Microphone 1, then we'll go to microphone 3.
Like, I'm always in therapy.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Brylan. So this video is not about basketball or how the NBA has completely ruined the sport of basketball over the last 10 to 15 years with having a bunch of effeminate men flopping on the court trying to get to the free throw line instead of actually playing a competitive sport like, I don't know, grown men. Sorry, I guess I'm still a little bitter. But I want to show you something that just happened in the NBA that proves a point of what I'm going to show you a little later in this video that will utterly shock you if you're a Christian. And no, that's not hyperbole. So even if you hate sports, I promise you, you do not want to miss what I'm going to show you in this video. Hey, if you get value from this video, would you consider hitting that thumbs up button? You know when you like this video to get pushed out to more people, and it would really help spread the truth. So the Chicago Bulls, one of the most iconic teams in NBA history, just released an NBA player from their team named Jaden Ivey. I mean, so what, right? Wrong. The Chicago Bulls posted this earlier. They said the team has waived guard Jaden Ivey due to conduct detrimental to the team. So what was the detrimental conduct? Well, it was a video that was posted to Jaden Ivey's social media. Keep in mind that Jaden Ivey proclaims to be saved by Jesus. Can you guess the detrimental conduct yet?
The world can proclaim LGBTQ. They proclaim Pride Month in the NBA. They show it to the world. They say, come join us for Pride Month to celebrate unrighteousness. They proclaim it on the billboards. They proclaim it in the streets. Unrighteousness.
So, the detrimental conduct that got Jaden Ivey released from the Chicago Bulls was that, well, he proclaimed the name of Jesus as his savior and has a biblical view of LGB. And he called out Pride Month, which has infested literally everything. It's everywhere. It's in everything. Every corporation, the public education system, all of entertainment, every kid's show. I have videos on all of this stuff, by the way. LGB, Twan, the religion, it is a religion, never.
Okay, so I feel very vindicated right now because Brylan, he is actually a pastor, and he said it. So I'm not the only one who's there waking up to this. It is a religion. We need to shut this down. Shut it down. Because they're forcing everyone to be a part of it because they say, oh, well, these people are marginalized and you need to feel sorry for them. And you're a bigot if you don't agree. No. If you want to do that, that's your religion. I'm not going to be a part of that. You don't want to be a Christian. Okay. That's your business. That is your free will. And I will let you have it. But don't you dare tell me what I am supposed to believe, especially when it's degenerate behavior, if you don't stop. Let's continue.
Mistake that. So when they say, keep your religion out of this, enough with the religious stuff. They are a religion. They are following their God, Satan. So again, the detrimental conduct here is that Jaden Ivey is a Christian who spoke out against the radical left LGB ideology, and it cost him his spot on the Chicago Bulls. Think about that for a second. You know, a lot of Christians, a lot of people really, are still sleeping when it comes to the radical left agenda. You know, it takes a lot more guts to be Jaden Ivey than it does to be Stephen Curry, for instance. Talk about a total sellout. Stephen Curry and his wife Ayesha pathetically pander to the woke mob and have sold their souls for fleeting fame. You know, Stephen Curry and Ayesha Curry have completely forfeited their faith, whether it's pandering to the left, promoting and selling their soul to the woke mob and giving in to LGB and endorsing Kamala and the Obamas and just the absolute worst depravity in our society. They have given themselves over to it. Let me let you in on a little secret. You know, these satanic radical leftists will never be satisfied. They will never be satisfied in their own sin. And that's why even Romans 1 says that they have to invent new ways of sinning. But it's not just that they'll never be satisfied in their own sin. They will never be satisfied with your compromise. They will continue to demand more and more until you are a husk that has nothing left. You know, then they'll go and suck the soul out of their next victim. Never compromise and never apologize for standing in the truth. And while Ivy is literally kicked off of the Chicago Bulls for proclaiming his faith, standing up for Jesus, and standing against Pride Month, not in a violent way, by the way, yet someone like Ayesha Curry is embraced with open arms as she sells her soul more and more every single day. And she could say stuff like this, and she's hailed as a hero in our society.
After we got married, we found out we were pregnant with our daughters so quickly. I didn't even have time to think about what I wanted anymore. It's so interesting. I spent my entire life like trying to work towards something, and then it kind of just disappeared, and I didn't think twice about it. But after my daughter turned 1, I remember there being a shift and being like, I have goals for myself. Like, this doesn't feel right. I love being a mom, but I love doing other things too. And I need to get my shit together and figure out what that looks like for myself now.
If I have a career and I'm not home, like, did you experience that?
I still experience that. I still experience that. I'm always in therapy.
So that's the type of mindset that the left and that the world embraces and promotes and glorifies. She's literally saying, there's no way around this. She is literally saying that a big part of her regrets getting married to Stephen Curry, and she regrets having children because, well, Stephen Curry and her own children are holding her back from doing what really makes her happy. And she's literally in therapy for it. She has such an eternal struggle with this that she has to go to therapy, when the real issue is the fact that she has let Satan come in and whisper in her ear. But the reality is that a woman with more money than you could ever imagine having has to go to therapy every single day because she is not content. Gee, I wonder why. In fact, Travion Henderson, who's a running back in the NFL, came out in support of Ivy, and this was so awesome. The world said this about Jesus. Some said, he's demon-possessed and out of his mind. Why listen to a man like that? The Pharisees wanted people to think that Jesus was actually being controlled.
And I want to pause it right there and say good morning, Spud McKenzie. Thank you so much. And Spud says the mainstream media is trying to say he had a mental breakdown for what he said. That's interesting because just looking at this passage, they said the same thing about Jesus. They said he's demon possessed. They did. They did everything they could to demonize him and make him look like he was not the savior of the world. Mere men, that he could have called down a legion of angels on at any given time and said, strike him down. He didn't do that because he knew he had to be sacrificed in order to save us. I'm telling you, it's patience. It's patience, which means long suffering. Let's continue.
By Satan, that he was possessed by demons, and that everything he was doing was of the devil. And that's what they're trying to make it sound like with Ivy. In fact, John Root says, this is exactly what sports media is doing to Jaden Ivey. They say he's crazy and even mentally ill because he holds to a foundational Christian belief. In fact, Jamel Hill, one of the most radical leftists, she said, I honestly think Jaden Ivey is having some kind of episode. I have known folks who are zealots, but this seems like something more. There's something so deeply wrong.
You don't want to go along with this demonic behavior.
Point too. Why is it when any individual professes Christianity and what the Bible says, all of a sudden they're having a mental episode? You have LGB members saying they're women despite being a man and identify as whatever they like, but that's not a mental episode. You see how everything is backwards? In fact, the Bible tells us about people like this, that everything that they do, they will call evil good and good evil. Everything will be backwards and upside down. This brings me to something that just happened in Canada. Now, before you think, oh, this is Canada, this isn't in the U.S., this won't affect me if you live in America. Yeah, yes, it will. These are the same leftists. Radical leftism is the same everywhere, okay? Canada is being absolutely destroyed by radical leftism, and we're seeing America go in the same direction. And this is what happened in Canada. Canada's House of Commons passes hate speech bill that would remove religious protections. You are no longer protected by being a believer, being a born-again Christian, and saying, my view is what the Bible says. That will now be considered hate speech if your view lines up with biblical teaching when it comes to LGB or TWAN or transitioning children. In fact, these are the same radical leftists in Canada at this government leadership convention. They were literally fighting over who gets to be at the front of the line for being the most radical of leftists.
There's a point of privilege on microphone 1, then we'll go to microphone 3. Go ahead, delegate.
Yes, hello. I was standing here with my gender equity card before you called on the previous speaker. That's my point of privilege that I would like to raise.
I will explain the speaking order, which is fixed, that I cannot amend, which is the pro-con rotation. You can move yourself up a line that you're standing in.
I am pro, and I was...
We went...
This is
You went pro,
insane.
con,
We went pro, and my plan was to go con. The speaker at con mic 3 also has a speaking card.
Yesterday, this card was used in an inappropriate manner. I want everyone to be mindful that these cards for individuals like myself who identify as a Black woman have no value outside of this space.
They're literally screaming and arguing for not being called on because they were raising a card that they were given that gives them privilege to go to the front of the line for being whatever the radical woke thing is that they are. These are the same type of leftists that are in America. Republicans are not the saviors of America. There's issues there. A lot I can't stand. But the alternative that many conservative influencers are telling you, just sit out this next election. Just give it to the left. This is what you're going to get. So if you want to end up like Canada, which we are very close to becoming, don't pretend like we're not. If the left take control, again, they will do everything in their power to do exactly what's happening in Canada. Hate speech will come back, and it will be scorched earth. In John chapter 17, Jesus prays for you and for me. It's absolutely beautiful. Go read John chapter 17 in its entirety, and you will be encouraged that Jesus Christ is literally praying for you. And he says this in verse 14, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not ask you to take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sake I consecrate myself, that they also may be sanctified in the truth. Notice that Jesus literally prays that we not be taken out of the world, but instead we be sanctified and strengthened in the truth. You know, if you ever wondered what the will of the Lord is, well, part of the will of the Lord is that we continue to stay steadfast and sanctified in the truth while being hated by the world. We are not to give in just a little bit. We're not to compromise here or there so that we fit in. You know, it's actually not loving to enable people in their sin so you don't come off as a bigot or whatever the left wants to scream at you, whatever the world wants to scream at you. Well, you know, whenever you're tempted to compromise, remember the very prayer of Jesus Christ, our Savior, to stay sanctified in the truth, even when you're hated by the world for doing so. But hey, let me know your thoughts about all this in the comment section.
Yeah, because I mean, there are times when you want to, I don't want to say lash out, but you're just like, oh, it's frustrating, right? And a lot of times, you know, you have to remember this isn't against, this is a war not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities. It's spiritual warfare. Because again, we have free will. Angels don't. Satan doesn't have free will. But he wants us to give up ours. He wants to destroy what he never created. Because he cannot have the worship. Yeah, it's sick. It's sick. But that's where we're at. That's where we are at. And so I wanted to, yeah, like I said, I wanted to start off with that video. And next, I wanted to go to the top 3 trending stories that I had at the time. Some of them have changed because, of course, when I'm starting a little bit early. And but I just wanted to get to these top stories trending on X. So Governor Ron DeSantis, he has signed House Bill 445, known as Missy's Law, mandating custody for those convicted of violent or sexual felonies awaiting sentencing. It takes effect on July 1st. The law responds to the May 2025 murder of 5-year-old Melissa Mogul and her stepfather, Daniel Spencer, whom Judge Tiffany Baker Carper allowed to remain free on bond after his April conviction for attempting to meet a minor for sex, despite prosecutors' warnings. DeSantis called the ruling an outrage at a Tampa signing ceremony and urged lawmakers to impeach the judge, with Attorney General James Uthmeier labeling it as a dereliction of duty. No proceedings have started yet. So basically, you know, now it would be interesting if that were to happen. And the reason why I say that is because there have been so many instances around the country, especially in New York, where people have been released from prison after committing some violent crimes and then they kill somebody because they're not held, right? It's that whole cashless bond thing. It's like, well, they're too poor to afford bond. No, these people are violent and they should be kept in jail until it is time for their court hearing. But what I find interesting is they will have people in jail for lesser crimes, right? Way less. And they will keep those people in jail for years. That are citizens of this country, by the way. Yeah. It's not confusing. It's evil. Straight up. Now, the next top story, a salon owner reveals $272,000 payroll tax bill over 3 years. In a widely shared April 1st video, the owner explains these taxes fund Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment insurance on top of employee withholdings she remits quarterly. The figure is about $1.2 million in annual gross payroll for her team of 10 to 15 workers. So reactions split between outrage over the burden on small businesses and reminders that the funds support essential programs like healthcare and infrastructure. It's weird. Like, for a small business to almost pay the same as a large corporation with 10,000 employees makes no sense. Makes no sense. But that's how they get it. That's how they're destroying small businesses. So let's watch the video.
So we're going to take a guess. Who can guess within the last 3 years how much I have had to pay payroll taxes to just be able to pay you guys, which are all worth it, but this is a government issue. How much do you think I've paid in payroll taxes? It's just a tax that I pay to pay you guys.
In 3 years.
In the last 3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
In the last 3
I'm
years.
gonna say 60,000. I think 80,000.
I said 100,000. I'm gonna go 85. 90.
Okay. You want to weigh in, Liana? How much do you think in the last 3 years I've had to pay in payroll taxes?
45,000.
Okay. Are you all ready?
No.
Really you want to guess? 1,000? $272,000 to the U.S. government just to pay people that you will also pay your taxes on as well. And then when you go to buy something, you will also be taxed on the item that you are purchasing.
I feel awful.
No, it's,
I'm gonna
you're
go.
also, and then you get paid, and then your paycheck's half of that because you're also paying taxes. And then when you go to purchase something, you will be paying taxes.
And we pay for the same thing.
The U.S. dollar is taxed 1 million times before it even ends up in someone. So
We used to go to war for taxing.
no taxation without representation.
I could buy a house with that.
Yep, me too.
No wonder.
Anyways, love you all.
Yeah. And I had broken down a couple months back when we were talking about the 16th Amendment and the home income tax that was instituted by Woodrow Wilson, and looking at how 40% of your earnings go to taxes. 40%. It's egregious, and it needs to stop. And where it stops is people take a pay cut. I would love to see all of the members of Congress cut their salaries in half. They're making like what, 174,000 right now? Cut it to 80,000. Put a cap on it. Forever and ever, amen. You can never make over $100,000. You should never be making more than what American people make. And if we are to base it on that, you should be right above the poverty level, right? But then that would make you desperate people. But even though you're not desperate people, you're still taking money from special interest groups, from lobbyists. You're disgusting. It's disgusting. But if we were to lower your salaries, if we were to shrink government, which we need to do, our taxes would be lower. And we would have a booming economy because people would actually be able to afford things. See, the government doesn't work off of people living off of other people with taxes. It works off of capitalism. Somebody makes something, we buy it. That person that makes something is actually able to employ people to make whatever those things are. It's capitalism, y'all, not communism. All right. Third item I want to get to is the Supreme Court skeptical of Trump's birthright citizenship order. So President Trump signed an executive order in January 2025 to deny automatic U.S. citizenship to children born in America to undocumented immigrants or non-permanent residents, reinterpreting the 14th Amendment. During April 1st oral arguments, several justices, including Neil Gorsuch, questioned government lawyers on history and effects, appearing ready to uphold precedent granting citizenship citizenship to nearly all U.S. born children except those of diplomats or invaders. The case spotlighted examples like Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, now a cartel leader, and wealthy Chinese using surrogates for dozens of citizen babies raised abroad, fueling sharp divides over immigration security and constitutional protections. It's all disgusting because the only reason we have the 14th Amendment is because of the Dred Scott case, where they basically said, no, we're not going to, by court, decide if emancipated slaves will be recognized as citizens. This is something that needs to be handled under the legislature. This is where you get the 14th Amendment. You don't get it just because somebody felt like it. The 14th, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were written specifically for emancipated slaves. It wasn't written for everybody else because it wasn't necessary for other people. Now, people want to say, well, how did everybody else get their citizenship? They came here the right way. They actually, we can use, like I said yesterday, Ellis Island. They were vetted. They came through the right way. They were naturalized. Okay. Now, even though some people might poke fun at the Ellis Islanders, they still did it the right way to be recognized as naturalized. In that clause, it does not exclude people that would come here illegally, because the assumption was it was put in place for emancipated slaves. Why? Because if it wasn't put in and it wasn't worded the way it was, my children would have to basically apply to be naturalized citizens. Do you get that? Does anybody understand that? Like, it's completely missed. You know why it's missed? Because they misrepresented with the Wong Kim Ark case. That person should have never been recognized as a citizen because his parents were here illegally. They were not naturalized. He was born on the soil. Okay. And they decided, well, we're just going to give this person citizenship because of domicile of his parents, even though his parents were under Chinese jurisdiction because they weren't citizens of the United States. We'll get into it in a second. But I'm just saying, it's on its face, it's harmful because you took something that was put in place for me. Because like I said, without it, my children would not be citizens of this country in perpetuity. That's why it says born or naturalized. I'm not a naturalized citizen. I'm a born citizen. And I had to be generationally through this 14th Amendment, because emancipated slaves were not recognized as human beings until they put this in place. They actually had to put in place a civil rights legislation to recognize human beings after slavery. It's maddening because people want to say, well, no, it's just soil and anybody. No, it's not. It's not, and it's never argued from this purview. And I'm a little bit over it because you're misrepresenting the law. It was written for emancipated slaves so that their generationally, descendants would be made whole and citizens of this country. It is only recognized to this group of people, but nobody really reads the arguments. They just assume what it says and they interpret it how they want to. Why would I think any less of people who can't even interpret anything right? Why would I think any less of them? You don't care about this country, but you want all the benefits of it. Yeah. So getting to looking at what happened with the case yesterday. And then we will, like I said, get into a little bit of the research that I did about the case, the arguments. Again, I'm a little bit over it, but like I said, it's because it's argued from the purview of making people here illegally citizens and people who are non-residents citizens, when it wasn't written that way, and it wasn't written for them. It was written for emancipated slaves and their descendants, period, the end. That's why it says or naturalized, because if somebody is naturalized here, they are recognized as a citizen, but they have to be naturalized. So they're recognized and their descendants are recognized, so that their descendants don't have to continually go back and say, well, you know, I'm kind of here. Yeah. And it's because my people were naturalized and we are recognized as citizens of this country. That's it. That's all you got. But you can't hide under born if you are not a descendant of chattel slavery, because it doesn't apply to you. It doesn't apply to Indians on reservations. It doesn't apply to anybody else. And I'm really, like I said, I'm over it because you keep shoveling in people that don't belong here. They don't belong under the 14th Amendment. When this Kim John Ark person, he never belonged under the 14th Amendment. But they use it as a way to shoehorn him in. Yeah. And we'll get to him and what happened to him. Okay. But let's look at the first comments from Roberts.
Are 5 exceptions to citizenship that you do accept?
Yes, depending on how many you count, Justice Thomas, how you count them.
What is the underlying rule of law that you use to connect these 5 exceptions?
Sure. So as I just said, all of the exceptions involve situations where that U.S.-born child is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, because that extraterritoriality, the fiction of extraterritoriality, the interaction of another sovereign between the United States' jurisdiction and that person applies to the child as well as to the parent. Everyone else born in the United States is subject to the United States' jurisdiction. To answer Justice Barrett's question to my friend, that's what sets those exceptions apart from other U.S.-born persons.
We've heard a lot of talk about Wong Kim Ark, and you dismiss the use of the word domicile in it. It appears in the opinion 20 different times, and including in the question presented and in the actual legal holding. And the government doesn't want it to be overruled because it relies on, it's willing to rely on that particular fact in that case. Isn't it at least something to be concerned about, to say that since it's discussed 20 different times and has that significant role in the opinion, that you can just dismiss it as irrelevant?
Well, Mr. Chief Justice, I think we have to look at what the controlling rule of decision is in Wong Kim Ark. Justice Gray takes pains in the majority opinion to set out his analysis. He first starts with a premise that in construing the 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause, we look to the English common law. That was the rule that applied from the colonial era on, at least for the colonists and for European immigrants. He then says, look, Chief Justice Marshall tells us in the Schooner Exchange what subject to the jurisdiction means, again looking to the English common law. Under English common law, if you are born in the dominions of the sovereign, you owe natural allegiance, and those who are present in the dominions of the sovereign owe temporary allegiance for as long as they're present. The only exceptions, again, at common law were ambassadors, people born on foreign ships, and people who were born during periods of foreign occupation. He then gets to the government's favorite page, 693, where he says, look, we have had this rule in the United States as to citizenship, at least for white Americans, from before independence. The purpose of the 14th Amendment was to embrace that universal rule of birthright citizenship, to embrace and incorporate the common law exceptions with the single additional exception of the pre-existing exception for tribal Indians that we had in the United States, which is an analogous exception, and that's the closed set of exceptions. You can't make sense of the holding in the case without looking to the controlling rule of decision, which is the common law. And I think my friend agrees that under English common law, domicile was not relevant, and the children born to temporary visitors in the territory of the sovereign were always considered birthright citizens.
Well, Ms.
Yeah. So you can hear from the language, in my opinion, assumptions and how you interpret it, but never stating why it was even put in place in the first place. Like, why does the 14th Amendment even exist? Answer that question, because they didn't just pull it out of the air. They needed to make people whole after slavery. That's where it comes from. It wasn't just created to be created. But you would hear her and you would think that's why we have the 14th Amendment, because we needed something. Why? Why did you need that something? And this is what it chaps my hide, y'all. So I asked about a recap. So this is the 14th Amendment arguments case, Trump versus Barbara. The high-profile dispute challenged the constitutionality of President Donald Trump's executive order, right, 2025, that sought to restrict birthright citizenship under the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment. Now, here's the background of the case. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The reason it was written this way, it was to make slaves whole, or people that were naturalized whole, and recognizing the United States as citizens. Okay? And they're subject to the jurisdiction thereof. If you are not a citizen of this country, you're subject to another jurisdiction. This doesn't apply to you. It just doesn't. You're not a citizen of this country. It only applies to people here. Just because you're on the soil doesn't make you that. But that's their argument, the just soil. So Trump's executive order aimed to end or limit automatic citizenship for children born in the U.S. to parents who are undocumented immigrants or temporary visitors, right, on visas, or what administration calls birth tourism. It argued that such children are not fully subject to the jurisdiction of the United States because their parents lack permanent domicile, right? And that's where domicile comes up. So the lower courts, not the Supreme Court, the lower courts, right, included nationwide class action injunction. That's why we're here, because these activist judges had blocked the order, ruling it unconstitutional and inconsistent with long-standing precedent and federal law. The 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, the Supreme Court granted review in late 2025 and heard arguments in April 1st, 2026. A decision is expected by late June or early July 2026. President Trump attended the arguments in person. First time a sitting president is known to have done so, though he reportedly left before they concluded. It was about 2 hours. But there is a place for the president to sit, apparently, in the Supreme Court. He's just the first one to actually use it. So, key arguments of the Trump administration: the Citizenship Clause was meant mainly for freed slaves and their descendants who had generational ties and domicile in the United States. Yes. Thank you, Solicitor General, for getting it right. Now, subject to the jurisdiction thereof requires permanent domicile and allegiance, not mere physical presence or being subject to U.S. laws. That's where these other people, and I'm going to call them other people because you're not citizens of this country. Just because you come here, pop a squat, have a baby does not make that baby a citizen. They are under jurisdiction that you are. If I go to Russia and I have a kid, That kid is not a Russian citizen. It's a United States citizen. I just happen to have a baby on the soil. And that's how it should be here, but it's not. You know why? Because we have evil people. I'm cutting straight through. I'm not giving any of you excuses. You're evil. You don't follow the Constitution, and it's disgusting. Now, children of illegal immigrants or temporary visitors do not qualify as their parents owe primary allegiance elsewhere, drawing on a 19th century commentary and distinctions from British common law. This would address modern issues like illegal immigration and birth tourism without overturning core precedents. The administration emphasized that most countries do not grant unrestricted birthright citizenship. They don't. They don't. You can't just go anywhere and have a baby and that baby be a citizen of that country. Why would we need borders? Why would we need an immigration law? If what they're saying is true, then why do we even have immigration laws making people naturalized? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that's going to be the other argument, right? People are crazy. But thank you, General, for saying what you said, because yes, it was written specifically for the descendants of slaves and no one else. It wasn't written for anybody else. And the only everybody else that falls under it are the naturalized people. That's it. You're either a descendant or you're naturalized. That's it. That's the measure. But here they go. So here's the key arguments from the ACLU, which they hate everybody. Okay. The 14th Amendment codifies the common English law. We're not under English common law. We're not. We're not. We have a constitution. The rule just soil, citizenship by soil birthplace. That's a lie. Because again, I can't go to England and have a kid and that kid be a resident of the UK and I just get all the benefits of being, it doesn't work that way. You want it to work that way, but it doesn't. So making virtually everyone born on US soil a citizen, with narrow exceptions, children of foreign diplomats or invading armies. And that's the key, because they didn't want to be invaded and were being invaded. Ooh. Anyway, let me keep going. This was ratified in a landmark 1898 case. Here we go. This Wong Kim Ark, which held that a child born in the U.S. to Chinese immigrant parents who were not citizens and faced exclusion laws. So his parents were not citizens. So he should not be a citizen. And they said was still a U.S. citizen. Domicile was deemed irrelevant under the common law rule embodied in the amendment. They misinterpreted the law. They did. Because he's not chattel slavery. He was never a slave. He was never a descendant of chattel slavery. His parents were not naturalized, meaning he was not naturalized. Everybody was illegal and everybody should have been deported. But somehow they just decided to give him citizenship because of domicile. Well, they lived here. So that makes him a permanent resident. What? Yeah. The executive order attempts to rewrite the Constitution. It's not rewriting the Constitution. It's actually upholding the law that everybody's broken for decades, centuries, by the way, via unilateral action, contrary to the amendment's text, history, precedent, and federal statute. It would create uncertainty for millions of Americans' citizenship. They're not Americans. They are under the jurisdiction of wherever their parents were at because their parents are still illegal and not naturalized. It's real simple. It's real simple. Exceptions to birthright citizenship are narrow and frozen at the time of the amendment's ratification. Modern policy concerns like immigration do not change the constitutional floor. And here's the thing. Our Congress has never really outlined it. Every time you go to anyone in Congress, they just want to call out Wong Kim Ark. They never call out really any laws of birthright citizenship. It's just been an assumption. It's been a lie that's been carried forward for decades, over a century, and then people are just supposed to accept the lie. It's a lie. You cannot just be born here, just soil, and be a citizen. That is a lie. That is not the intent of the 14th Amendment, period. And I need people to get it right. I need you to get up off of Black Americans that are being harmed by this. And in proxy, harms everybody else. It's just gross. So the Chief Justice Roberts called aspects of the government's domicile theory quirky and reminded that it's the same Constitution. Barrett questioned whether the administration's logic would have denied citizenship to children of newly freed slaves. It wouldn't have. The core group the amendment targeted and pressed on the scope of expressions, right? That's weird. She questioned whether the administration's logic would have denied citizenship to children of newly freed slaves. What are you talking about, ma'am? It was written for us. That's why, just because people are in position doesn't make them smart. You just got the job. It does not give you any intelligence at all. Sorry. I don't care how much legal work you've done. That's kind of a crazy thing, but here we go. So Kavanaugh highlighted key phrases subject to the jurisdiction thereof and asked about whether exceptions are fixed in time. Justices pressed both sides on historical context, the meaning of domicile, right? Wong Kim Ark's holding, and practical implications, right? Determining a newborn's domicile status, because their parents are not naturalized here. So how can an infant have domicile that was just born? It's illogical. It makes no sense. And we'll get to that. Now, liberal justices Jackson appeared to view the challenger's position as more aligned with settled law and history. So the government faced tough scrutiny on whether the interpretation required rewriting the amendment's original public meaning or departing from common law principles accepted at ratification. So overall tone and likely outcome. So media outlets like CBS, SCOTUS blog, NYT, BBC, etc., describe the arguments as leaning against the Trump administration's effort to limit birthright citizenship. The justices seemed reluctant to upend a principle, not the law, a principle. Wow. Upheld for over 150 years that has shaped American identity. However, some conservative justices probed the potential narrower ways to address policy concerns without a broad ruling. This was not a ruling, it was just oral arguments. The transcript is available at Supreme Court and on C-SPAN covered it. So I said, can you give a brief definition of the word domicile and how it was used in these arguments? So domicile is a person's permanent legal home. An infant cannot have a permanent legal home, which cracks me up that they're just like, well, they have domicile. How? How? If their parents just got here 2 weeks ago and then they were born here, how do they have permanent domicile? They don't have a permanent legal home. They don't live here. So to place where they have established a fixed habitation with the intention to remain indefinitely or return to it as their primary home. If you're here illegally, you broke the law to get here and had a baby. I'm just using this one as an example. So your intention is to stay here indefinitely, even though you're here illegally, even though you broke the law to get here. It doesn't work. You can't square that. But they didn't talk about that, did they? It confines physical residence with the subjective animus manidi intent to stay permanently. So even if you intend to stay permanently and you get deported because you're not supposed to be here, what are we talking about? The baby gets to stay without you? How does the baby have permanent residency and you don't even have permanent residency? Unlike temporary residence or mere physical presence, domicile carries implications for legal rights, obligations, allegiances, taxes, and jurisdiction. A child's domicile is typically derived from their parents at birth. Again, if their parents aren't legally here or residents here, how do they just automatically have domicile? That's always been my question. Now, in immigration and citizenship discussions, lawful permanent domicile often implies not just living in the U.S., but having lawful status and intent to make it one's home indefinitely. What if they're here illegally? You're still not addressing the issue. That's my issue. But as you can see, how it's framed, but they never talk about this. This is what domicile is, you guys. So how domicile was used in 2026 oral arguments. The term became one of the most frequently discussed concepts during the 2.5-hour arguments. It was central to Trump administration's effort to limit birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause. The Trump administration position, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, requires political jurisdiction, meaning primary allegiance to the U.S. and full reciprocal protection. This allegiance is established through lawful permanent domicile. Lawful, not unlawful. So these people coming over here illegally, they don't have lawful domicile. What are we talking about? So a fixed home with intent to remain indefinitely plus lawful status. Children of undocumented immigrants or temporary visitors do not qualify because their parents lack domicile. Their primary allegiance remains with their home country, which is true. A newborn inherits their parents' domicile status. Now, that was the argument of Trump. That's Trump arguments. They distinguished this from the United States Wong Kim Ark, where the Chinese parents were lawful permanent residents domicile. They weren't actually, they were here illegally. The government argued the court there did not extend citizenship to non-domiciled aliens and was not asking to overrule Wong Kim Ark. So that was their argument. But again, I will go back here to where it actually outlined Wong Kim Ark here. They were not lawful residents here. They were here illegally. They were. Now, here's the ACL's position. We're just going over it again. 14th Amendment codifies the traditional English common law rule, just soil, with very narrow exceptions. Doesn't say just soil in there. I don't see it. But they just want to apply that. But it doesn't say just soil in there. So where does that, how do you square that? You're just going to make it common law. It was never English common law because it's not common. They had to create it to give people citizenship here who weren't recognized as human beings. What are we talking about? The stupidest lawyers. I'm telling you, lawyers are dumb. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Yeah, you spent, 12 years in school and you did all of these things. And some of y'all are just the most, you make no sense at all. You're common people and you have no common sense. Just disgusting. You would do whatever you have to do. You will sell your soul for evil, by the way, to justify what you want to get done. This is why some people can't stand attorneys. Because you know how to argue yourself into a pit and you will take everybody with you. I said that. Now, domicile is not a constitutional requirement for birthright citizenship. Wow, y'all just making up the rules as you go along. The word does not appear in the 14th Amendment text. No, it doesn't. Mention of domicile in Wong Kim Ark was just a factual description of the case, not a limiting part of the holding. But it was only mentioned over 22 times. The opinion embraced broader principles of birthright citizenship. Whatever, ma'am. Undocumented immigrants can establish domicile if they reside here with inherent intent to remain. So you can just be here illegally. Not a citizen. You can vote. You can do whatever you want to. You don't have to abide by any of the laws. Why do we have laws then? Why do we have immigration laws? If this is what you're saying is true, undocumented immigrants can establish domicile, then why do we have immigration laws? Why are people paying thousands of dollars to become legal citizens of this country? Why do we have over 300 legal ports of entry if people can just come here and do what they want to do? I'm sick of the ACLU. Y'all need to be banned. You are a terrorist organization, period. You are terrorizing the citizens of this country. Lord, I'm hot. Gotta put my fan on. My goodness. Let me get down to this other question. So I said, what happened to Wong Kim Ark after the case? Because nobody ever talks about what happened to this person. They always use it just like they used Roe v. Wade, trying to justify abortion. Because that child was actually born. That woman never had an abortion. Go back and read what really happened with Roe v. Wade. Okay? So the Supreme Court ruled a 6-2 ruling. This is for Wong Kim Ark, right? Born in San Francisco in the early 1870s to Chinese immigrant parents. Okay. Was a U.S. citizen by birth under the 14th Amendment. He was released from detention and allowed to re-enter the United States because he ended up leaving. And when he tried to come back, they were like, you're not a citizen. And that's how we got here to this case. So he continued to work as a cook in San Francisco. In 1901, a few years after the ruling, he was briefly arrested and imprisoned in El Paso, Texas, on suspicion of being unlawfully in the country. It took about a year and significant effort before authorities again recognized him as a citizen. He made several documented trips back to China, his ancestral village, and successfully returned to the U.S. 1905, after the first ruling, and then 1913, he married in China and had children there while supporting his family from the U.S. So they stayed there, and he came back here to work to support them. Just disgusting. There was no allegiance to the United States. None. And they claimed domicile based on his parents and shoehorned him into the 14th Amendment, which he had no rights to. We'll get to that. So in 1931, around the age 60, Wong made another trip to China. He filed paperwork stating his intent to return to the United States. He never returned to America. So he just went to China at 60 and never came back. Okay? The exact date and circumstances of his death are unknown. There are no confirmed records of when or where he died after 1931. So even with the Supreme Court victory, Wong and his descendants faced ongoing struggles in the U.S. immigration authorities. Several of his sons tried to enter the U.S. claiming citizenship through their father, just sanguilis, right? Because my dad was born on the soil, then I'm automatically a citizen. It didn't work that way. Some succeeded after long battles or appeals. Others were accused of being paper sons. Yeah. A common practice where people claimed false family ties to enter, detained, or deported. One son, possibly grandson, served in the U.S. Merchant Marine after being drafted during World War II. So Wong's win was a huge legal precedent for birthright citizenship, but in practice, Chinese Americans still dealt with heavy scrutiny, paperwork requirements, and skepticism from officials from decades afterwards. In short, Wong lived quietly as a cook in San Francisco, traveled back and forth to China a few times, but ultimately stayed in China after his 1931 trip, with his later life and death largely undocumented as U.S. records. Okay, so were his parents legal citizens? Because that was what we have to get to, right? No, his parents were not citizens. So you allowed somebody to be here illegally. They were not naturalized, right? Now, here are the key facts from the case in the record. His father and mother were both subjects of the Emperor of China, meaning they were Chinese citizens or nationals by birth and allegiance. They were not naturalized here. They did not give up their citizenship of China to be U.S. citizens. So how can the baby have domicile? This is where it comes back to the question. We're not questioning people that are naturalized here that have babies here. We're questioning people that are undocumented and are not naturalized, having children here, and then those children just automatically getting U.S. citizenship. It should not work that way, and it doesn't work that way on its face. But somehow it was granted under this case, which makes no sense. They immigrated from Taslan, China, and lived in San Francisco for many years. By the time Wong was born in 1873, they were lawful permanent residents. Okay, but they still were not naturalized. I don't know how they became lawful permanent residents. You're citizens of China. How did you become lawful permanent residents? Oh, because you just stayed here long enough? How were they lawful if they weren't naturalized? That's weird. They ran a business, maintained a permanent home in San Francisco, and were not diplomats or in any official capacity for China. They were never eligible to become naturalized U.S. citizens. The Naturalization Act of 1790 and later versions up to 1870 limited naturalization to free white persons. And the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 explicitly barred Chinese immigrants from naturalizing. So they just said that they were just lawful permanent residents. Don't make any trouble and we won't deport you. But they were never naturalized. They were never U.S. citizens. How did you end up giving this person citizenship? It makes no sense because I'm just looking at it. It makes no sense. But the Supreme Court's opinion repeatedly described them as parents of a Chinese descent, who at the time of his birth are subjects of the Emperor of China, but have a permanent domicile and residence in the United States. That's why domicile kept coming up, and she kept trying to back off of it because she knows if you dig deeper, these people were not naturalized and they couldn't be under U.S. law at the time. It's just disgusting how even then, just disrespectful to Black Americans who were emancipated slaves, made whole under the 14th Amendment, and then you bastardized it under this person. Yeah, I said it. It was wrong. And it needs to be corrected. Fix it. I don't care whose feelings are hurt. Forget your feelings. Fix this. Just gross. Just gross. So I will connect this. I have to breathe. I need to take a break for a second. But thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And when we come back, we will get into more of this discussion about the Supreme Court oral arguments on the 14th Amendment. We'll see you on the other side.
Lineage, legacy, leverage. Genealogy is the lane. Community is the destination. But care, that's how we get there. At TBAT Task Force, we don't just research history. We reclaim what was stolen. For Black American descendants, proving who you are is the first step toward reparative justice and recognition.
Get 4 hours of expert research, a verified certificate, and a care-based session to guide your next steps. A $155 contribution doesn't just fund your search, it fuels 5 community positions. It's a cycle of growth.
Ready to claim your history? Start your journey or book a free care call today. Your legacy is waiting.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And Uncle Coolwater says, who are the people that are giving arguments that's supposed to support us, are they doing a good job or not? Because I'd rather have you, founder, represent the people. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, right now we have the, I guess he is the, I don't want to misquote his name, but he's the general. Let me go back to get his title. He is the Solicitor General, D. John Sawyer. And here's the problem with a lot of these cases. Black Americans, and when I mean that, I'm not talking about people that are melanated. I'm talking about people that are descendants of chattel slavery. It is very rare that we are self-represented in any of these cases. We are represented by people that it doesn't affect them because they don't care. So they don't argue it from that perspective. Now, like, let's just say the whole thing with Ghana, and we use that as an example in the United Nations. It was a non-binding vote, but it was really a temperature check, right? To just see how people felt about chattel slavery and if they saw it as a grave injustice. It was a grave injustice. But here's the insult to injury. After chattel slavery was over, after we had reconciliation, the Confederate Army was released and they wreaked havoc on the Black community, putting in redlining, right? Jim Crow laws, sunset towns. You harm Black Americans after slavery. We don't talk about that. And now you want to have further insult to injury with this 14th Amendment. They never put people in the place that can actually argue it from a proper perspective, because you know what? Then that means you would actually have to get something done. Yeah, I said it. They make sure that we can continue to live in a circular way. And then they ultimately want us to blame one another. I don't blame the people coming here illegally and having children here on this soil recognized illegally. I don't blame them. I blame people that are allowing it to happen. That's who I have an issue with. I've got an issue with our congressmen and women in the House and Senate allowing this to happen. Their ideology has done nothing but destroy this country because they are not upholding the rule of law. You cannot insert English common law, which people love to do, in a place that has a constitution and it has rules. We do not live under English common law and rule. But attorneys will argue that within legislation, which is why there was actually legislation put in place to never allow attorneys, lawyers, to be a part of our legislative body because they knew it would end up like it is now. They knew that these attorneys would come in and literally upend and try to destroy the Constitution. They're never supposed to be allowed to be lawyers. But here we are. But you know what? At the end of the day, I know God is greater than this. I'm just glad everybody is out on the table now. I am so glad we are getting everybody on record of what their positions are. So let's go to Jackson. I will have everybody's links there so you can go back and watch. But for the sake of time, I want you guys to listen to Jackson's response.
So I want to understand how you are responding to the government's argument that because temporary visitors and undocumented immigrants are still governed by their home countries, and in the government's take on this, you can't have you can have allegiance to two different sovereigns. Those groups can't have the requisite allegiance to be subject to the United States for the purpose of the 14th Amendment. That's what I hear the government saying, but I do think that that seems to rest on a different understanding of allegiance than what was in the English common law, and that when we understand what the English common law thought about allegiance, you can see that you can have allegiance to two different sovereigns at the same time. This kind of goes back to Justice Alito's questions. I mean, I was thinking about this, and I think there are various sources that say this, that you obviously have permanent allegiance based on being born in whatever country you're from. That's what everybody recognizes. But you also have local allegiance when you are on the soil of this other sovereign. And I was thinking, I, a U.S. citizen, am visiting Japan. And what it means is that, if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me and prosecute me. It's allegiance, meaning can they control you as a matter of law? I can also rely on them if my wallet is stolen to, under Japanese law, go and prosecute the person who has stolen it. So there's this relationship based on, even though I'm a temporary traveler, I'm just on vacation in Japan, I'm still locally owing allegiance in that sense. Is that the right way to think about it? And if so, doesn't that explain why both temporary residents and undocumented people would have that kind of quote unquote allegiance just by virtue of being in the United States?
That's absolutely right, Justice Jackson, and that comports with the plain text of the 14th Amendment as it applies to everyone born in the United States other than those subject to the exceptions that were baked in a close set. You owe natural allegiance as a U.S.-born citizen. If you want to look at the parents of those people, and let's say the parents are foreign nationals but not ambassadors, the parents owe temporary allegiance.
Right, so the babies get the permanent allegiance piece of this, and the parents get the local allegiance piece of this. So to the extent we're looking for allegiance, we have it.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, and if we were looking at allegiance and we say it is illegal to have a baby here on the soil if you are not a naturalized citizen or a U.S. citizen, what are we talking about? They broke the law. If we're really going to look at common law, they broke the law. Thank you for playing. Thank you for playing the legal jargon game. Because that's what I wanted you to say. I love it. I like it. So I asked a question. Oh, let me see. Let me remove this. I asked a question to Grok, and I said, so the response from Justice Jackson, can you briefly outline what would happen to an American citizen if they committed a crime in Japan? Would they be arrested and removed from the country? I'm just saying, because she said, if you stole something, you would be subject to their laws, right? Yes, an American citizen who commits a crime in Japan is fully subject to Japanese law, just like Justice Jackson's example. She noted that a U.S. citizen visiting Japan could be arrested and prosecuted there for stealing a wallet, illustrating territorial jurisdiction and local allegiance while present in the country. Okay. So that's what I was like, okay, all right, well, you're right for that. But I said, would you be deported? Would you be removed if you broke the law? Step-by-step overview based on Japan's criminal procedure for foreigners. This general outcomes vary in individual circumstances. Japanese, a high conviction rate, 99%, and the system emphasizes investigation and confession. So arrest and initial detention, right? They can arrest you for suspicion of crime, detain you for 48 hours. But they inform you there's interrogation process, extended detention, pre-indictment. If needed, a prosecutor can arrest, and a judge usually approves detention for up to 10 days, extended for another 10 days. No routine bail at this stage. The U.S. Embassy can visit if notified and provide a list of lawyers, right? So the embassy can come in for you. Indictment and trial. If prosecutor finds sufficient evidence, you're indicted and become a defendant, right? Sentencing and punishment. So minor offenses, a fine and sentence, probation, like 1 to 5 years. Serious offenses, prison, time served in a Japan facility. Okay. U.S. citizens may request a prisoner transfer treaty to serve part of the sentence back in the U.S. Deportation and removal. It's not automatic for every crime and not immediate removal upon arrest. After conviction, serving the crime, right? So likely deported if sentence is imprisonment without suspension for 1 year. Drug-related offenses, drug convictions almost always lead to deportation. Okay. Possible to remain temporarily if you have strong ties to Japan. But okay, see what we're talking about? If you have strong ties, you can stay. And immigration authorities grant special permission, though visa renewal may still be denied later. Those without strong ties or with expired visas are typically deported after release or conviction. So they escort you out of Japan. You don't get to just stay there. Yeah. Why did you want to use Japan as an example? We don't uphold our laws. We don't uphold our laws, and we allow people to break the law, whoever we like. And right now, the Democrats like illegal immigration, and they've exploited it, bastardizing the 14th Amendment. Because as I showed you, if we want to use common law, fine. They've broken the law because they're here illegally. They've immediately broken the law. They've immediately become criminals, and nobody should be allowed to have any benefit, even if their child is born here, because they came here illegally. How do you square that? You're calling them undocumented. They're criminals. What are you talking about? It really goes back to that. Chaps Mahad. And Patty Cake says Judge Brown was a better bench judge in D.C. than the Supreme Court. And David Gardner says Americans talking about abuses abroad is a bit rich. You guys have living in a racist country that has no rules. Magazine does and says, okay, what you're saying makes no sense. But all right, these criminals broke the law. Look, this is about criminal behavior. At the end of the day, people are here illegally and they need to be held accountable. You cannot just come here illegally and have the baby on the soil and the baby be a citizen of the country. That is part of this argument. Now, what I'm saying is, if they are going to really bring in English common law, according to their own argument of English common law, the person that comes here illegally and has a baby, they have to go because they've already broken the law. They're already in violation of common law. You can't be in violation of common law and then say, well, the baby born here is justified. What? You can't do that. It's either one or the other. Either you say, if you come here, you're not going to be considered illegal if you have a baby here. You would have to say that, but you can't because you've broken the law coming here illegally. You can't square the two. And that must have been a bot because I was like, who talks like that? And if you do talk like that, I need you to kind of figure it out because I could not understand what you were trying to get to. Long pre-charge definition. Okay, so we're still talking about Japan. Yeah, but I had to bring that up. I really, really did. Now, I wanted to get to some of the, I want to say would they be counter protesters? So these were people protesting the people that were for birthright citizenship. Okay, it was Danielle and Zoe from Chicago Flip Thread, and they were protesting the people that were in favor of birthright citizenship. And another thing, if this is such a racist country, why are people always fighting to come here? Huh? If this is such a racist country, why are you here? Get out. You don't have to be here. Bye. See ya. Deuces. Go away. If this is such a racist country, why are you having your children here in mass? if this is such a racist country. Yeah, it's that part for me. And that one, chasing her around. What are you doing, sir? If you don't leave her alone. Yep, there's the... Okay, what is this about? Okay, here's my thing. Y'all are talking about, we're citizens here. And was anybody out there with a flag, American flag? What is this nonsense? This is some tribal stuff from another country. No, it doesn't belong here in the United States. What are you doing? You're making the argument that we want you off the soil. You're making the argument that we don't want you here. You are not trying to assimilate into America. Go back to your country and do all that. But you won't, because your country isn't free like ours is, where you can actually do this. That's why you are here. As racist as you say it is, that's why you're here. So I wonder who paid for those signs.
Working class organization. Our members are Black, Latine, and
Yeah. And that other melanated person trying to block Danielle, you know that's not a citizen.
Immigrants are under attack. What do we do? When immigrants are under attack, what do we do? When immigrants are under attack. Show me what under attack. What do we do? When immigrants are under attack, what do we do?
Yeah.
Show me what democracy looks like. Show me what America looks like.
Yeah. That's an immigrant.
We are here. Show me what America looks like. We want show me what with our immigrant brothers and sisters. Black lives matter. All lives matter.
No, they only matter when y'all want some stuff.
You have not divided us. You have united us.
Yeah. Because see, you can't have it all. You can't have, how should I say? You cannot have a country of laws while at the same time destroying the laws. Okay, again, if you were going to go back to the common law rule, that's fine. But these people still have to be here legally, and they're not. And those are the people you're not talking about. And it actually comes to birther tourism too, because they're still not domiciled people. That's why you wanted to stay away from that conversation. See, the only reason why the Wong Kim Ark person got the status he did is because his parents were at least here and domiciled. Because again, it was illegal for anyone of Chinese descent to become a naturalized citizen in the United States. It was illegal. That's why he got caught up in Texas. Okay? He tapped out and just left and stayed in China. I get it. Because you weren't welcome here. Period. It's not a slight. It's just facts. It is what it is. Now, I want to get into a few other articles that actually kind of pertain a little bit. So let's check this out.
Still Benny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bisignano, for joining us today. I'm deeply concerned that you don't take the responsibility to protect Americans' their sensitive information seriously. Under your leadership, you allowed the IRS to violate taxpayers' privacy tens of thousands of times, as has been mentioned before. This is a catastrophic leadership failure, and it also really is a huge hit on the public's confidence in your agency's integrity. You told Ranking Member Neal earlier today that you have implemented a risk management function that includes risk management meetings that discuss cyber policy. Unfortunately, this issue wasn't caused by a cyber attack. It was caused by your department illegally handing over taxpayer information to the Department of Homeland Security. So again, what are you doing to rectify this mistake?
So the IRS turned information over to the Department of Homeland Security? And you're mad about that? The privacy of American citizens. Ma'am, the Patriot Act has already trashed the Fourth Amendment. You know what I'm saying? What are you talking about? Oh, that's right. This comes back to defending people that are here illegally, that shouldn't even be filing taxes, first of all. And it gives DHS more information on how to find these illegal immigrants. Just say you want to protect illegal immigrants. Just at least be honest about it. Just at least be honest about it.
Conduct, ensure that this doesn't happen again, and attempt to earn back the trust of taxpayers.
Probably never said this, so I'll say it now. Obviously, all these events occurred before my tenure. So, but I oversee the organization, and it's my responsibility to get it right. And I don't know how often you all have overseen a risk management function and understand the depth of a risk management function in what is really a large organization protecting Americans' privacy, increasing collections, and driving higher service.
But does your risk management do something to make sure that people internal to the agency are not providing illegal information to other agencies? You haven't clearly stated that you're making sure that that does not happen.
One, there's an ongoing litigation on this matter.
So you are not prepared to say that you are going to make sure that...
No, I'm going to make sure. I'm just trying to make a point that your words are not gospel, right? The words you're using, the numbers you're using, there's a litigation, and I'm not going to comment on it. I am overseeing the agency.
There's a kind of old axiom that you can't fix something if you don't know it's broken. Do you acknowledge that this has been broken and needs to be fixed at the IRS to protect taxpayer information?
I'm fixing more things than you want to think about.
So you don't acknowledge that.
In the IRS.
And we also need to hear from Homeland Security and the President about this infringement on Americans' privacy protections. And I am co-leading a resolution.
No one's cared about the protection of anybody's privacy, all the breaches that we have annually. I think it's just a quarterly celebration when our information is breached and you get that letter saying, hey, you know what, there was a breach, sorry, your stuff is all over the internet, or your stuff has been on the black web, or hey, yeah, just in return we'll give you just free access to Experian for a year, just to make sure that nobody completely destroys your life by taking over your identity. You care now. You care now because all the illegals that you brought over here are going to be found out. That's why you care, ma'am. You don't care about American citizens. And who are we even talking about? What? It's crazy.
resolution of inquiry with the Representatives Gomez and Sanchez that would require the Executive Office of the President, Treasury, and DHS to provide information to Congress regarding the IRS's improper disclosure of confidential taxpayer data to ICE. Normally, we'd be able to debate this kind of privileged resolution rule in committee, but earlier this year, Republicans snuck a provision into a House rule that prevents these kinds of resolutions from receiving any consideration in committee or on the floor. And it really is a cowardly attempt to undermine transparency for the American people. You know, one of our jobs in Congress is to conduct oversight. In late January, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, TIGTA, released a memo outlining concerns about the IRS's readiness for the 2026 filing season. Similar to the National Taxpayer Advocates report, they cited concerns related to staffing reductions, growing inventories, and incomplete modernization efforts, whatever you want to call that. And they also highlighted potential customer service delivery challenges related to closed taxpayer assistance centers. These centers are responsible for assisting taxpayers in person, and during last year's filing season supported about 1 million taxpayers. So, Mr. Bisignano, are you taking any steps to reopen these centers?
Spent a lot of time on the taxpayer advocate letter and on the Inspector General's letter. And I think the results you're seeing in performance today show
Are you going to reopen these centers?
Show the mitigation factors that went into. We are serving more Americans across the board right now.
So you're not going to reopen centers because in person is critically important. We get the feedback in our offices.
This weekend, we had our taxpayer experience day and saw twice as many people as we did last weekend in our taxpayer centers.
So
there were taxpayer centers closed before I came on board. I have not closed the taxpayer center since I've been here.
But you are
and
not
we are serving more Americans than we ever have.
You are not going to reopen these, and we hear it from constituents across all of us do, folks struggling to get information from the IRS. So we also know that
40 more million Americans accessed information.
Thank you,
to be served.
I yield back.
Yeah, she had to yield back because, you know, you're in the tank for all the illegals. And Spud says, my mom has a heart condition. She went to the ER last night. Oh, we were praying for her. I'm so sorry. I just called to give her a wellness check and she cursed me out for interrupting her watching Unfiltered Vision News on her phone. Oh, well, thanks, Mom, for watching, and we're praying for you. I hope you're doing okay. I really do. And all that. So thank you. And also thank you for watching. I definitely appreciate it. And JJ says, good morning, peace and blessings. Don't call her again, but she don't get mad at you, man. She watching me from the phone, bro. Just saying. Now, I wanted to go over that a little bit, the whole situation with the IRS, because it is a little bit confusing. So I said, is the argument in this video to not share information across agencies? If so, why is it wrong to share information across agencies, right? Because it said, the woman said, why is the IRS giving information to DHS? Okay, so no, the argument in the video is not to not share information across agencies in a general sense. Okay, so it actually argues, Delbene criticizes the IRS for illegally handing over sensitive taxpayer data, tens of thousands of violations to other agencies, DHS and ICE, right? She calls it a catastrophic leadership failure that undermines public trust in the IRS ability to protect privacy. She presses Berzano, the gentleman that you heard, on what he's doing to prevent internal staff from providing illegal disclosures to other agencies. She also mentions a resolution of inquiry involving the Executive Office, Treasury, and DHS to investigate the improper sharing. So why is unauthorized sharing of taxpayer information wrong? right? Taxpayer data held by the IRS is protected by strict federal law, primarily Section 6103 of the Internal Revenue Service Code, right? The law generally prohibits the IRS from disclosing returns or return information to other agencies or anyone else without specific legal authorization or taxpayer consent. Reasons this matter include privacy protections. Americans' tax returns contain highly sensitive personal and financial details, income status, deductions, social security numbers, addresses, family information, etc. Unauthorized disclosure can lead to identity theft, harassment, and financial harm and misuse. Oh, like how you all misuse our information all the time, how there's like several data breaches all the time. And yeah, okay. So statutory limitations, Congress deliberately created narrow exceptions for when the IRS can share data. Okay. Public trust and compliance, rule of law. Agencies are not supposed to ignore statutory privacy safeguards just because sharing might be convenient for another purpose. And then precedent and separation of functions. Tax collection is kept somewhat insulated from other law enforcement roles precisely to avoid turning the IRS into a general surveillance or enforcement tool for unrelated policy goals. But here's my problem with the IRS. We can have somebody 200 years old right now filing taxes last year. Yeah, you heard me. Somebody 200 years old because they do not clean these rolls and they are not cross-referenced with Social Security. They are not cross-referenced with immigration to make sure and ensure that everybody who is using that particular Social Security number is actually alive and they are who they say they are. Now, that's what we're trying to get to. But you want to make all these like blocks and guardrails so you can keep people here illegally. I'm really sick of it. You people are the worst. We actually pay you to work. And the more I see videos about people in Washington, it's like, we hired you? Really? I'm appalled because my taxpayer dollars are going to pay you. And you are just the rocks on the floor. Just not intelligent. It's bad. It's really bad. So, would sharing this information reveal a person's legal immigration status? Yes. That is why we are here. I'm telling you, the Democrats, you can't hide anymore. You can't. You can't. Yes, sharing certain IRS taxpayer information with DHS ICE can reveal or help confirm a person's legal immigration status, but indirectly and in limited ways, not by directly stating this person is undocumented. So they can tell the difference between people that are here legally or illegally if that information is shared from the IRS. Should somebody who's here illegally be able to file taxes and get a tax return? I will sit back and wait. They shouldn't, but they get an ITIN number so they can't file taxes. What? Huh? This is only as bad as it is because it's being allowed. And they're just people that need to go to prison. There are people that just need to be removed from office. There's a lot of things that need to happen. But I'm just saying, some things, I'm like, woo. Still 2 videos I did not get to. I will get to them tomorrow. But there is one I wanted to get to from Ohio, and it's talking about indecency in front of children. Now, this kind of goes back to the first video that I played and how Pastor Braylon was talking about how this the LGBTQ 2+2S is a religion.
What do you believe will prevent you from doing regular drag performances in front of adults?
Well, through the chair to the representative, I believe that the language is so vague that it does not allow an opportunity to clearly define what an adult cabaret space is versus what a performance space may be.
Follow up? Yes, thank you. So I actually have the bill here in front of me, and it's very specific on what an adult cabaret is, okay? and that it's a performance that is obscene or harmful to juveniles, which is found in 2907.01, the definition. It's clearly defined, it's been defined for a very long time, not only in Ohio, but in the United States. And it says if you engage in obscene conduct in your performance, that you can't do it in the presence of a minor.
Right.
It doesn't say you can't even do it in the presence of adults. There's even an exception, you can do it in a private residence or anywhere where children are not present. So that means the only thing it is prohibiting is obscene performances in the presence of minors. And the definition of obscene performances, it says things like depicting sexual activity, masturbation, sexual excitement, nudity, in a way that represents human beings as mere objects of sexual appetite. Why do you think drag performers should be able to engage in simulated masturbation, simulated sexual activity in the presence of a minor? Because that's the only thing that the bill bans.
Through the chair to the representative, there are a lot of things in that statement. And I can reply to one of those being that there are already laws on the books here in the state of Ohio that deal with such obscene performances and behavior. And I don't see how this bill reinforces or does anything to further that.
Follow up? Thank you, Chair. Actually, there isn't. In the state of Ohio right now, there are gaps in our laws. A strip club cannot allow a minor to be present during a strip performance, but the stripper can go into the parking lot and perform in the presence of a minor in the state of Ohio, and it's lawful under our current laws. Under our current laws right now, that is absolutely permitted, and we've seen performances at public parks that cross the line. So I'll repeat the simple question. Why do you think you should be able to perform an obscene, and the bill does not say drag queen performances are inherently obscene. I know other states have taken that approach. This bill does not do that. So no different than if Beyonce came to Ohio and engaged in obscene conduct during her performance. Any performer in the state of Ohio, explain to me why you think it is okay for an adult to engage in an obscene performance in the presence of a minor.
Well, if it's obscene or harmful to juveniles, then it would, again, under Ohio law, be considered already illegal. Otherwise, it's what is decided to be appropriate for children should be determined by their parents, and I don't believe that should be determined by politicians. So, again, and then it goes on.
Yeah, so that individual doesn't care. It's like, well, that should be determined by their parents, not politicians. Really? It's indecent. There are decency laws in this country, which is why people rail against things that happened in the month of June under the guise of, we're just being free. Really? It's disgusting. The things that have happened. Men literally walking around with socks on, and that's it, in front of children. And to the parents that have their children at these events, yeah, you should be arrested for, what is it called? Delinquency of a minor, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. What are you doing? That's the evil that lives in our country. It's evil to try to justify depraved behavior in front of children. But see, this is part of Satan's plan to go after the children. Because once you change the minds of the children, you've created a whole generation that will do what you want them to do. So we are in a battle. And we either want people that are going to uphold the law, or we're going to put people in place to destroy the country. And it's weird because it's like you came from places that were destroyed, fled, only to come here to destroy the country again. And you know why? Because people have allowed it. And they've encouraged you to break the laws. They've encouraged you to destabilize the country. But you know what? There's a remnant of us that are going to stand up against that. Because this is our home, and we will not stand by and let it be destroyed by anyone. I know that New York Post video that I had, and it had Zoe and Danielle, and it seemed like there were a few of them, but at least in that few, faith like a mustard seed, we're going to turn this around. And like I said, that very slim argument, they keep trying to bring in common law. Okay. Because even under common law, you still have to be here legally present. And these people were not here legally present. And they did not claim domicile here either. Birthright tourism and people coming over the border illegally. So thank you for that contribution to the oral argument. I just hope that people are intelligent enough to see within the argument, they actually laid out that yes, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of millions of people who came here with illegal parents are not citizens of this country. They're just not. And with that, we're going to end our broadcast for today. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. We'll be back tomorrow with our Prayer with Friday. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.